Do you think Venice is romance, carnivals, and music on the water? Then how about an island that has been officially forbidden to visit for 300 years? Island of Poveglia. Less than a kilometer long. Closer to Lido than to the center. But on maps, it is circled in red not because of military secrets. The island's history is longer than Venice's itself. The Romans called it the land of the last breath. Ships with plague were unloaded here because the living were not allowed near the city. In 1348, when the Black Death killed a third of Europe, the Venetian Senate passed a law: all the sick, the suspicious, even ships arriving from infected ports, were sent to Poveglia. Not for treatment. For isolation. Over 2 centuries of plague epidemics, between 100,000 and 160,000 people were burned and buried on Poveglia. Ashen bones mixed with the soil so that the entire island is one mass grave. But the worst began later. In 1922, a mental hospital opened on the island. They brought those whom families had abandoned, whom society deemed hopeless. And there worked one man whose name is still not spoken aloud. Dr. Felice Nigno. On paper, a psychiatrist. According to survivors, a butcher who hid behind science. He performed lobotomies on the living without anesthesia. He injected patients with unknown drugs. And at night, they say, he injected himself and sat for hours in the basement where bodies had once been burned. Modern historians have calculated, over 20 years of Nigno's work, about 5,000 patients passed through the hospital. Of those, fewer than 100 survived and left the island. They say Nigno's methods were so cruel that even nurses refused to enter some wards. One nurse left a diary, found 50 years later. She wrote, "The screams only stop towards morning. But the worst is when they stop altogether. Because then the walls start talking." That same nurse described one case that fits no rational picture. In 1937, Nigno ordered 5 patients locked in a basement cell without food or water for 3 days, an experiment in sensory deprivation. After 3 days, he opened the door. All 5 were dead. Not from hunger or thirst, they had died a few hours before the door was opened. And each had the same expression frozen on their face, not terror, but relief. As if they had finally escaped something that had tormented them here. Since then, the basement was sealed. Then filled with concrete. But even concrete could not stop what began to crawl out from there. The bell tower on Poveglia was built in the 12th century. To this day, a bell hangs there that was rung during the plague to warn boats to keep away. Local fishermen say, on windless nights, the bell rings by itself. One strike. Pause. Another. No one knows why. In 2014, a group of independent researchers risked landing on Poveglia with municipal permission. They had a plan: 3 hours, video documentation, measurements. They lasted 40 minutes. One participant, an American journalist, later wrote, "We saw nothing. But we felt it. The feeling that 100 people were watching us, hostile. And the air smelled of tar and something sweet, like rotting flesh, though there is no organic matter on the island." The island has been closed to visitors since 1968, when the mental hospital finally shut down. Entering without special permission is a criminal offense. Authorities cite structural instability and asbestos. But everyone who has studied Poveglia's history knows the real reason: the island was declared not just dangerous, lethal. Geological studies show that levels of formaldehyde and other decomposition products in the soil are hundreds of times above normal. The earth has been rotting for 800 years. But there is something else that chemists cannot explain. Soil samples from the island contain an unknown alkaloid, found nowhere in nature and not synthesized in any lab. It causes immediate aggression in rats, then catatonia. The study was classified. The author disappeared. Dr. Felice Nigno died in 1954, in that same hospital on Poveglia. Official cause: cardiac arrest. Unofficial: he was found dead in a locked ward where he usually conducted experiments. On his face, the same mask of relief as his patients. An autopsy was not performed. The body was cremated within 24 hours. The ashes were scattered over the lagoon, far from the island, as if they feared he would infect the earth even dead. Today, Poveglia is repeatedly put up for auction. No one buys. Because even investors willing to build hotels on concentration campsites avoid this island. In 2013, a developer proposed turning the island into a luxury spa hotel. Everyone opposed: historians, the church, even former patients who had miraculously survived. One of them said, "You don't understand. The ground there is soaked in screams. You would sleep on bones and listen to the walls talk to you at night." Today, only two types of people visit Poveglia: rare urban explorers with cameras who aren't afraid of fines, and paranormal research groups who get permits through court orders. Almost all of them later undergo psychotherapy. One female urban explorer who spent 7 hours on Poveglia told us, "The scariest thing is not ghosts. It's when at 3 in the morning you hear footsteps in the corridor, even though you know you're alone. Then the footsteps stop right behind you. And you feel breathing cold. And it whispers in Italian, 'Perch sei tornata? Why did you come back?'" Infrared thermographers have recorded anomalous cold zones on Poveglia that cannot be explained by drafts or wall heat capacity. They come and go. They cluster in the wards where lobotomies were performed. In 2007, an Italian TV crew was filming a report on Poveglia. Their sound engineer recorded something he later said he would never broadcast. The recording lasted 44 seconds. On it was a voice, male, but not alive, metallic, as if speaking through a stone wall. It said one phrase: "We cannot play it for you. For ethical reasons. But we can quote what the sound engineer said. He said, it wasn't a request. It was an order. And I understood every word, though I never studied Italian." The crew left an hour later, footage unfinished. The report never aired. The network cited technical problems. But off the record, one of the cameramen, after returning, refused to leave his house for a week and demanded that the lights stay on at all times. He was later found dead. Official cause: aneurysm. But colleagues insisted he had been healthy. In his last days, he kept repeating one phrase: "It is inside me." It waited 800 years to get out. Venetians try not to think about Poveglia. But every year, during high tides, the water washes strange objects onto the Lido's shore: old bones, scraps of hospital gowns, and once, a child's doll with burned-out eyes. No one wants to know where it came from. The police do not register such findings. The mayor's office does not comment. The only thing they did was install warning buoys 300 meters from the island, danger zone. Landing prohibited. Fine up to €50,000. But warnings do not stop the most desperate. In 2018, 2 young Austrians sneaked onto the island at night. They live-streamed on social media. Followers watched them enter the main building, laughing, then suddenly fall silent. The stream cut off. 3 hours later, the Coast Guard found their boat drifting. The boys themselves were not on the island. No traces, no bodies. Only a phone, lying on the dock, battery dead. The case was closed after a month. Official version: accident at sea. Unofficial: 2 police officers working the case requested transfers. They gave no reason. Plague, madness, Dr. Nigno, the sealed basement, the missing people: these are 5 layers of horror on Poveglia. Each layer older than the previous. Each adds something new: new death, new mystery, new question. Geologists drilled 3 boreholes on Poveglia. At 5 meters depth, the drill hit something hard, unlike stone or bone. Analysis showed abnormally high iron content and an unknown alloy with no parallels in antiquity or modernity. Those samples were taken to the University of Padua. Their fate is unknown. The drilling project was shut down, reports classified. Officially due to lack of funding. Unofficially, after one of the geologists working on the island was hospitalized with acute psychosis. He claimed that on the island, someone spoke into his head, literally into his head, without vocal cords. Demanded that he stop drilling. When he didn't, it began describing his childhood, his fears, his most shameful secrets. No one could have known that. No one. After that incident, no scientists returned to the island. Only security patrols the lagoon, and the occasional daredevil who ends up in psychiatric care. Poveglia is a place where science admitted defeat. Not because the phenomena are inexplicable, but because the price is too high. Poveglia is not cursed. A curse is when someone casts a spell. The island is different. There, pain, fear, and madness have been compressed into the soil, the air, every brick. This is not supernatural. This is human nature concentrated until it became physics. Venice stands on piles driven into the lagoon bed. But sometimes it feels as if the city stands on a single pile, and that pile is called Poveglia. As long as the island absorbs the pain, Venice can be beautiful. This is not a metaphor. It is an old Venetian myth that no one believes, but that never dies. They say that if you sail to Poveglia at midnight and listen closely, you will not hear screams or moans. You will hear silence. So dense it presses on your ears. A silence that has a taste, ash, salt, and old iron. The silence of 160,000 people who have no more voices. The Italian government has repeatedly promised to clear the island and turn it into a memorial. Each time the project is frozen. Because each time workers go to the island, they leave. And those who stay stop talking. If you ever find yourself in Venice, do not look for Poveglia. Do not try to bargain with a boatman. Do not listen to those who say it is a cool place for photos. Because the island does not like to be disturbed. It prefers to take you to itself. Subscribe if you want to hear the next story. It happened not in water and not underground. It happened in the air, where planes do not fly, and people see what cannot be. And the scariest thing is not that Poveglia exists. The scariest thing is that there are hundreds of similar places on Earth. And they all know where you live.